Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare वृक्षवल्ली आभासुहरि वनचरे वृक्षवल्ली आभासुहरि वनचरे वृक्षवल्ली आभासुहरि वनचरे वृक्षवल्ली आभासुहरि वनचरे पक्षिः सुस्वरे आलवेति, पक्षिः सुस्वरे आलवेति। पाण्डुरङ्ग हरि जय जय पाण्डुरङ्ग हरि, पाण्डुरङ्ग हरि जय जय पाण्डुरङ्ग हरि, पाण्डुरङ्ग हरि जय जय पाण्डुरङ्ग Vitala,
Vitala, Jai Jai Panduranga Hare, Panduranga Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Hare Krishna Brajabas Bhavana, Hare Krishna Arav, Hare Krishna Ananya, Hare Krishna Chaitanya Nityanam, Hare Krishna Arya, Hare Krishna Keshav, Hare Krishna Arna, Hare Krishna Riyan, Hare Krishna Siya, Hare Krishna Aditi Amla and Aradhya, Hare Krishna Pavni, Hare Krishna Tarini, Radha Sanhita, Hare Krishna, Haridas, Haribol. Who did I miss? Everything shifted. Vanchakoptabhisha Kripa Sindhave Vichakpatitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nantakodi Vaishnaviniki Jai Gaur Premanande Haribo.
Hare Krishna, welcome Maharaj to Youth Jam. We're very happy to have you again today. We'll get started with Youth Jam as usual with a prayer. The way it works is that someone will nominate another devotee to give a prayer, and if that is seconded, they will be asked to give that prayer. I'll just put the format in the chat while we wait for some nominations. All right. Any nominations so far? You can raise your hand, you can speak out. Okay, we have two nominations. Let's see if we can get a second for one of them. Okay, I think Sia wins. Sia, would you mind giving the prayer? This is a format in the chat.
Hare Krishna. Dear Shri Shri Radha Niyamadav, if you so desire, please let this meeting go smoothly so that we all can gain something from this meeting and keep it with us. Please consider a humble request. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sia, for that wonderful prayer. If this is your first time joining Youth Jam, please feel free to DM me in the chat and we can introduce you to everyone else here. And if you'd like to invite your friends, send them to youthjamofficial.com and please feel free to follow our socials and stay updated. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Over to you, Maharaj.
To me? Okay. Hare Krishna. Well, for those of you who are following the regular chanting of the Bhagavad Gita, otherwise known as Chad, chapter a day, we have moved over into the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So that could be good news. You might already know the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and even if you don't, it's one of the nicest chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. I say that having considered that the last 6 verses in the Gita, chapter 12, are repeated in many places. Prabhupada refers to them frequently, and so does Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. I thought what would be nice is if we could chant this chapter together. It's only 20 verses. Who knows what other chapter is only 20 verses? Guess what? You get 15 points if you answer right. And Chaitanya Nityanam gets 15, so does Araf, so does Pavni, so does Haridas. And then, if Brajaras Prabhu could find for us the way that Kaviraj Goswami references these last several verses in the Madhya Lila. And just see in context why he brings them up and why they're so important. And then I'd like to hear from all of you why you think they're so important, and we can have a discussion of the last 6 verses in the 12th chapter. Does that sound intriguing? That's good. So how many verses would you like us to say, Rajras Bhavana, in order to be equitable?
For the Sanskrit, we could do 4 each, and then for the reading, we could do 2.
Okay. How about if we do Sanskrit, English, and then we do 2 each?
That'd be awesome.
Okay. Arjunuvacha evam satata yukta ye bhaktastvang paripasate ye chap yaksharam avyaktang tesham ke yogavitamaha. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Shri Bhagavan Vacha Mayavesha Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shradaya Pariopetas Te Me Yukta Tamamataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect.
यत्वक्षरमनिर्देश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्र गमचिन्त्यं च कुतस्थम् अचलं ध्रुवं सन्नियम्येन्द्रियग्रामं सर्वत्र समबुद्धया ते प्राप्नुवन्ति मामेव सर्वभूतहिते रता. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me.
क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the manifested impersonal feature of the supreme advancement is always troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः अनन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धर्ता मृत्युसंसारसागरात् भवामि न चिरात् पार्थ मय्यावेशितचेतसाम्. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without division, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha. For them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय निवास्यसि मय्येव अतः न संशयः. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always, without a doubt. Atachittam sammadhatum nasi mayi stiram apyasya yogena tato mamidjaptam dhananjaya. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. अभ्यासेऽपि असमर्थोऽसि मत्कर्म परमो भव मदर्थमपि कर्माणि kurvan siddhimavapyasi. If you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Ata Athaitadapya shaktosi kartum madhyogamash sarvakarma phala tyagam tata kuru yayatmavan. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated.
श्रेयो हि ज्ञानम् अभ्यासाज् ज्ञानाद् ध्यानं विशिष्यते ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागस् त्यागात् शान्तिरनन्तरम्. If you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action, for by such renunciation one can attain peace of mind. Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitra karuna eva cha nirmamo nirahankara samadhuka sukhakshami santushta satatam yogi yatatma dridhanishchaya mayarpita manobuddhir yo madbhakta same priya. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me.
यस्मान्नो द्विजते लोकः लोकान्नो द्विजते च यः हर्षामर्षभयोद्वेगैर्मुक्तो यः स च मे प्रियः. He by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety is very dear to me. अनपेक्षसुचिर्दक्षः उदासीनो गतव्यथः सर्वारम्भपरित्यागी यो मद्भक्तः स मे प्रियः. My devotee, who is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and not striving for some result, is very dear to me.
Yo na rishati na divsti na soshati na kanakshati shiva shiva pratigyani bhakti manya same priya. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, and one who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me. Sama satru cha mitra cha tata manapamanyo sitno sasaka dukesu sama sanga vivarjita tulyaninda stritur moni santusto yena kenachit aniketa stira matre bhaktiman me priyanara. One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any resident, who is fixed in knowledge, and who is engaged in devotional service, such a person is very dear to me.
ये तु धर्मामृतमिदं यथोक्तं पर्युपासते श्रद्धादानमत्परमा bhaktasthetiva me priya. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Tat Sat Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Bhakti Yoga Nama Dvadashodhyayaha Hari Om.
Wow, what a great chapter, don't you think? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 out of 10. Okay, let's see the Madhya Lila. You think, is there anything that leads up to it that gives us, let's see, okay, this is Madhya Lila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then told Sanatana Goswami about proper renunciation according to a particular situation. And the Lord forbade dry renunciation and speculative knowledge in all respects. So he's giving a summary of Kaviraj Goswami speaking. He's giving a summary of what Lord Chaitanya taught to Sanatana Goswami, right? Which chapter is this?
This is chapter 23.
Yeah, 23. So he's giving a summary. Okay, so let's go past this purport. Then he just starts quoting this Gita. Here we have 13 through 20, one who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is always satisfied, forgiving, and self-controlled, and who is engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence dedicated to me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. Did you check all the boxes? Anyone? Did you meet the criteria here? Not envious, a kind friend to all living entities. Don't think yourself proprietor. You're free from false ego. You're equal in both happiness and distress. Arav, so far so good. Who is always satisfied? Always satisfied. Who's always satisfied? Forgiving and self-controlled. And who is engaged in devotional service with determination. All of you get to check that box. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the show. Okay, Sang Sheta, tell us what you're thinking. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. Here's the purport. Maybe this gives us a clue more. One should not be jealous of members of other castes or nations. It is not that only Indians or Brahmanas can become Vaishnavas. Anyone can become a Vaishnav. Therefore, one should recognize that the bhakti cult must be spread all over the world. That is real advaishta. Moreover, the word maitra, friendly, indicates that one who is able to preach the bhakti cult all over the world should be equally friendly to everyone. These two and the following 6 verses were spoken by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 12:13 through 20. Shall we try another one? He by whom no one is put into difficulty or anxiety, and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is liberated from jubilation, anger, fear, and anxiety, is very dear to me. A devotee who is not dependent on others, but is dependent solely on me, who is clean inwardly and outwardly, who is expert, indifferent to material things, without cares and free from all pains, and who rejects all pious and impious activities, is very dear to me. The word anapeksha means that one should not be concerned with mundane people and should not depend upon them. One should depend solely on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and be free from material desires. One should also be clean, within and without. To be outwardly clean, one should regularly bathe with soap and oil. And to be inwardly clean, one should always be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. The word sarvaramba parityagi words indicate that one should not be interested in the so-called smarta vidhi of pious and impious activities. One who is free of all material jubilation, hatred, lamentation, and desire, who renounces both materially auspicious and materially inauspicious things, and who is devoted to me is very dear to me. One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from attachment to material things and always grave and satisfied in all circumstances, who doesn't care for any residence and who is always fixed in devotional service, such a person is very dear to me. Devotees who follow these imperishable religious principles of Krishna consciousness with great faith and devotion, fully accepting me as the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Then he goes on quoting from Bhagavatam. So let's hear what you're thinking about two things. One about the chapter itself, and the other is about Kaviraj Goswami's placement of those last 6 verses in his summary of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Our phone lines are open. Our operators are standing by to take your calls. Brajras Bhavana.
For the reading we had in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, could you explain a little bit more how that connected to what Mahaprabhu wanted to explain to Sanatana Goswami about like renunciation and speculative knowledge?
Explain the context of the first verse we read before these 6 and why it was
Yeah,
about
but I
renunciation.
didn't really see how the verses we read connected to that initial point clearly.
About how these Bhagavad Gita verses didn't connect.
Yeah, to what the point that Mahaprabhu wanted to make.
I'm not sure that they did. What my feeling is that it's a grand summary of an amazing section of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And just as one includes a Mangalacharana at the beginning of one's explanation of the Lord and his devotees, then at the end he's bringing in closure. And I felt when we heard it at Govardhan that he was putting in all things auspicious for us to remember. I don't remember it being specifically related to the teachings on renunciation.
Thank you.
What points stuck in your mind? How does it make you feel hearing those qualities? What do you think of Krishna's tone when he's saying them? Yes. Akshaj.
Hey, Sugar Maharaj, I was just thinking about how you could see all these qualities in Prahlad Maharaj, but how he never had any hatred towards anybody, even though he went through like so many difficult challenges in his life. And you could see he was always auspicious and so pure, like within and without, like within, like externally and internally. So that's what I was thinking.
Wow, that was a nice one. Can you think of any other figures, anyone in our Bhagavata history, Gaudiya history? I'm thinking of a personality whose name starts with an H and whose namesake is here on the call today. And he's smiling. Okay, go ahead, Arya.
Haridas.
Is that a question or an answer?
Haridas.
Can you explain yourself why you picked Haridas?
Because Haridas was a good devotee.
Name 2 ways he was a good devotee.
He had lots of devotion.
One. Okay, what's the second? I think you're onto something because you're talking about the specific qualities Krishna was mentioning here. Can you think of anything in his pastimes that match what Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, the qualities that are dear to him?
Uh,
How about call a friend? Who can add one quality Haridas had? Because Arya made such a nice point about how he's a good devotee and he had lots of devotion. Keshav, what do you think? Can you help her out?
So Haridas Thakur had a lot of compassion because even though he was getting whipped in the marketplaces, the whipper people, they were like, oh, the Nawab will kill us if we come back with you alive. So he on purpose left his body and they just put his body in the Ganga and then he reached the other side and came back to life.
Phew. Wow. Yeah, he was begging for mercy for the people who were beating him, right? Advaita Chandra?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So nice to see you. When you said about the qualities and Srila Haridas Thakur, I immediately thought of Tatha Mana Apamanayo, kind of in the sense that in like when you're in Man and Apaman, when you're in happiness, distress, like fame, infamy, like specifically like respect and straight up harassment or Apaman, offense. Like he was kind of born in a he himself was a personality such that the Hindu population, Brahmanas, Smartas rejected him, and then the Muslims rejected him, and like he was kind of an outcast completely. And then that too, he was beaten. He was uh, so tortured so much. There was so much backlash, so much allegations, harassment, etc. So many attempts to kind of make him stumble and uh, spread things about him, test unnecessarily like interfering with him, sending distractions, trying to make him fall down, etc. But he didn't fall for any of those enamorments, nor did he didn't slip ever, and he was always as I said, compassionate to his people who were prosecuting him, and he wasn't affected either when he was being praised. He wasn't getting proud. He remained humble, and when he was being absolutely beaten or just not accepted by either group, not allowed to in the Jagannath temple, which a senior devotee I was hearing from, he was the one who installed the Jagannath as in the form of Brahma, but now he is Haridas Thakur and he can't even enter the same temple. So it's such humility, and no matter what the situation is, respect or offense against him, he's very stable.
Oh, thank you very much for elaborating. Very helpful. Sancheta.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One example that I thought was Bharata Maharaj. And I felt this because in his final birth, he acted as if he was deaf and dumb. And that form was Jada Bharata, so that people would like leave him alone and he wouldn't be distracted from his meditation. But he was treated like a slave and like fed scraps, but he like remained completely satisfied and like he didn't have any ego against anyone, and he just thought that everything that was happening to him was Krishna's mercy.
Wow. Thanks for reminding us of Jad Bharat, one of my heroes. Thank you. Kavin.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So like I heard like there are like these types of avatars like Shaktivesh avatar who like Krishna like empowered. Like for example, Krishna empowered Jesus and Muhammad to spread Krishna consciousness. And then he did the same thing with Haridas Thakura. Since so like Haridas Thakura also spread Krishna consciousness like Jesus and Muhammad.
Thank you, Kavin. Yeah, we see throughout history there are certain empowered personalities who have these qualities. They're not, they're unusual. Rajras Bhavana. What happened to Sia? Did we have Sia already?
Oh, Maharaj, I thought that we moved on to different people and I was going to talk about one of the qualities of Haridas Thakur, so that's why I put my hand up.
That's all right. We can mix and match. It doesn't matter. You go ahead and say your thing.
So I was gonna say that like one more quality of Haridas Thakur that Krishna also states is like how forgiving he was, and that also adds to the fact that he was very compassionate, because there's also that story of the prostitute who came and how he also like gave her like his mercy and like the nam, and how when they were beating them, Haridas Thakur was so forgiving at the end. So like there's one thing to be like tolerant and like go with it, but then there's another step that he took to like actually forgive them. I feel like that really shows so much about his character. So,
I like the way that you mentioned that it's two different stages. One thing's tolerating, the other one's actually forgiving. And that Haridas had both of those. Yeah, thank you for expanding into another part of his pastimes with the prostitute. Okay, Brajarath Bhavana.
I was thinking about how 2 points. One was the way Krishna presented these qualities. He presented in a way where one doesn't leave any like garbage behind or like leave anything bad in the world, but also to give something good to the world. Where it's like don't be envious or you don't affect others, but also be someone who's very kind. And I like the way that, or even for like being, don't be a proprietor, but be free from false ego at the same time. And then the second point that I was thinking of was what Srila Prabhupada decided to highlight in his purports. I felt that it was almost like his own realizations of what he felt like he connected the most or almost took like as a mission, where like to be a kind friend to all living entities. And he emphasized that point where it's about preaching uh, Krishna consciousness everywhere. And then he also highlighted the point of one should not depend on just mundane people, one should only depend on Krishna. And when we read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, it shows that this was his mood as well, coming and preaching in the West.
Wow. Yeah, it made me eager to hear more Lilamrita also. It's definitely, Prabhupada embodies all those qualities, and you can hear them, especially in the Lilamrita, recounting his life in the early times too. Haridas.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I was going to say, like all the Goswamis, they were self-controlled. They used to live under one tree every day. They wouldn't get attached to one tree, and they never used to trouble everyone. And whatever used to come, they used to take. They used to accept. They never used to complain.
Yeah, specifically mentioned that they were appreciated by everyone, as Prabhupada puts it in the translation of the Srinivasacharyas, of the gentle and the ruffians. They both appreciated them because of the good qualities that they had. Well, let me ask you all a question. So, is there one quality that you heard out of there that you would like to emulate? And if so, how would you do it? Is there any one of those qualities that you heard that you thought, I'd like to be more like that? Arav.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. In the verse, the 13th verse, I believe it was, they said Advaishta was one of the qualities, which is, I believe it's non-enviousness. I feel like that's one of the really great qualities to embody, because when one has that, then they're able to, rather than envy people, they can admire them or they can help them out, rather than just looking at the faults and seeing wherever they're better than I am and then just envying them for that. So we see them as worse, and then when they're better, we see them as envious. I mean, as with envy. But if we don't have that envious quality, we can truly be humble.
There's a verse in the Bhagavatam that says that the highest religious principle is non-enviousness. It's the highest standard of religion, is to become unenvious of others. Chaitanya Nitai Nam.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I felt that the mention of Shitoshna Shikutukeshu, well, the Shitoshna are being equipoised in heat and cold, especially in this climate recently that we've been having, is really important because I felt pretty disturbed over the last week and a half or so with the extreme heat wave that we've had inside and outside. And similarly, in the winter, we also feel quite disturbed when it's extremely cold. It's not so cold in California, but in other places, or if we're traveling, it just becomes another thing that we have to deal with. And I want to be able to develop that trait of being not so disturbed wherever we go, just being more adaptable to the weather and the climate, because I feel like it's such a practical skill to have so that we don't get so bothered with those kind of things. And suppose on a yatra or something like that, more uh, energy and focus on being able to contribute and participate in the yatra or whatever we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, somebody who's dhira. It's not affected by the changes in weather, changes in the body even. And this point about being equipoised is something that comes up again and again in the Bhagavad Gita. Requires a much higher context, having a context that we're just passing through and not being disturbed by little changes that are happening in our lives. Okay, last chance. Which quality you want to take with you? Brajras Bhavana.
I want to take self-control and forgiveness. They were both grouped together. And that's something that I'd like to improve on.
Self-control and forgiveness. Any definition of those, or inspiration for them specifically?
Yeah, I think for self-control, I like generally like and both with forgiveness, I feel like I get disturbed sometimes by my circumstances or my environment or those around me. And I find it I find that it'd be very helpful if I could have better control over my mind and my words in those situations, because that would keep me less it'd keep me in a better state of consciousness. And it's also one of the qualities that Krishna mentions over here, and it's something that I'd like to improve on.
Thank you, Brajras Bhavana. Arna?
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Like Braja said, I also wanted to focus on the forgiving part, because I remember someone had mentioned about um, it's not just tolerating, it's also forgiving, like Haridas Thakur did. And I feel like that's something definitely that I should work on, and I think a lot of people should.
Thank you very much, Arna. Yeah, we could talk a lot about forgiveness. It's a big topic. In fact, Radhika Raman gave a whole seminar here about it. I have tons of notes on it, and have also given presentations on forgiveness, and it's worthwhile cultivating. Haridas, what's your takeaway?
I wanted to develop the quality of not troubling anyone and not getting troubled by anyone. So basically, like tolerance, and then also not troubling anyone and helping anyone and adjusting to whatever others need.
Nice. What? I feel elevated just hearing what you all are attracted to. Okay, Arav?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I was looking at the 20th verse of this where Krishna says, whoever is this is very, very dear to me. He says very twice. So I just thought this quality called Mat Parama, I believe it is in Sanskrit, that's taking Krishna to be everything. And he said ones with those are very, very dear to him.
Wow. All right. You go for the main one. All right, Sangsheta.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I wanted to take away satisfaction because like it really helps us to be happy with what we have instead of constantly wanting more or like satisfying our needs instead of like finding joy in what we have and not wanting more. And I feel like this should be used like if we should try to satisfy Krishna in a way, like we should chant more of his names and we should try to please him instead of trying to please ourselves for our self benefits.
Thank you very much for bringing that one up. Shweta Manjari, can you practice satisfaction or is it something you just have to wait for? Is it a practice or just something that comes to you or doesn't come to you?
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Please accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. It's a great question. Very glad you asked because obviously whatever I say should apply. I think it's something that you must practice. I think if I were in a more pure position in my bhakti, it would come to me, but I think that with my conditioning, it's something that I have to practice by offering gratitude, one, counting my blessings, and two, realizing that there's always more that I can want, but that wanting will keep me entrapped in the material world. So I think there's another sloka in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. And in that sloka, it's described that he who is internally satisfied is one who has realized Brahman or Krishna. So I think just by practicing bhakti, we're positioning ourselves to become more satisfied as we continue to advance. Is what I've read and heard, but I don't have a
Nice.
position.
Nice extemporaneous answer. I liked it a lot, starting with gratitude. There's another place it's mentioned, and it's in the 17th chapter. And Krishna, in talking about the austerities of the mind, mentions satisfaction as a practice. In the context, it's a practice that you should practice satisfaction. And I liked how you said, if you think of the process of material desires and how whatever you attain, you want more and it never ends. And you can understand that whatever I have now could be enough. And then in one word, satisfaction means enough. I don't need anything else. Krishna also mentions in the Gita, Yadrishta Labasantushto. You should learn to be satisfied with that which comes of its own accord. Yadrisha means something that comes without asking for it. Labha means gain, and santushto means can be completely satisfied with what comes. That'd be interesting to practice for a day, right? Okay, Keshav. I love your perspective there. It looks like you're standing next to the Empire State Building or something.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I
Back.
just
Hare
wanted
Krishna. Yeah.
you're talking about satisfaction, and I just thought of the first verse of the Ishopanishad where it said that, oh, we need to talk about our quota, like we need to be satisfied with our quota. And when it means satisfied with our quota, we must not endeavor during the week I was just thinking that I heard in a lecture somewhere that we should not try to endeavor more because by any way like our destiny through our karma, whatever we have to get will come to us whatever through whatever we do. So we should not endeavor because it'll anyway come to us, and if we try endeavoring, we'll be ultimately frustrated. So we should just be yeah, as you said, that whatever comes of its own accord we should be satisfied with, because you won't be able to get anything else.
Yes. Thank you very much. Very insightful and helpful. And Ara for the close.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, I just had one question about that point that Keshav brought up about over endeavoring. I believe that's called Ugra Karma. So how do we know when we're over endeavoring, and how do we know that we haven't hit our quota yet?
Well, Ugra karma means something slightly different. Ugra means horrible, and karma means activities. Means we're forced to do horrible kinds of work because of our past activities. It's Ugra karma. But there's also in the Upadeshamrita, Atyahara. Ati means extreme, and ahara means eating or collecting. So how do we know when you have more than you need? When you start feeling that your life is cluttered. I mean, you can notice that there's a tendency to hold on to a lot of things and try to get more than you need. And one of the ways you can notice is if you try to winnow out. You know what that means? Can somebody put that word up? Winnow? It's a good word, in my humble opinion, if I do say so myself. Not that I invented the word, but I like to use it. Winnow. Winnow, I think. It says here, winnow, a verb, blow a current of air through grain in order to remove the chaff. A combine cuts, threshes, and winnows. A combine cuts, thrashes, and winnows the grain. Remove from the grain. And comes from wind. Yeah, it's like if you blow wind against those grains, then the part that you don't need goes away, and then the essence is there. We have to be vigilant to see, because in the way of yukta vairagya, we may take on things in order to use them for Krishna, and we should see that we don't become attached to them. For instance, in the Gaudiya Mat, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur emphasized yukta vairagya, renunciation by using everything for Krishna's service. In fact, it's a principle given by Rupa Goswami. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjita nirbanda krishna sambande yuktam vairagyamuchite prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshabi prityago vairagyam palgukatyate. That if there are things that you can use in Krishna service and you reject them falsely out of a sense of false renunciation, because of a sense of false renunciation, so that's not real renunciation. Real renunciation means to use whatever you have in the service of Krishna. So then we find Gaudiya Mat, he had his devotees go out and preach, and to do that, he had them go in a nice car. Now, usually sannyasis, sadhus, they'd walk barefoot everywhere, but he put them in a nice car and dressed them up nicely to go out and preach to the upper crust of society. And that was Yukta Vairagya. However, as mentioned in the Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, that's the biography of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that sometimes he noticed that they would become attached to the car for the prestige of who got to drive it. And then he said, well, that's uh, you're attached. You're not using it for thinking of you just using it for Krishna. What to speak of after the new temple was built, the Bagh Bazar? Who's been to Bagh Bazar Temple in Calcutta? Brajras Bhavanas. Who wants to go to the Bagh Bazar Temple? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. We're going there soon, by the way, next Youth Yatra. One of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples built this marble temple in Calcutta. It was beautiful. And then he noticed, did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that some of his disciples were fighting over who got what room. And he thought, okay, then that's over collecting, because your mentality is wrong. You're thinking of the prestige of who gets to stay where and so forth. So the mood is important. And anyone who's stationary collects things. When you travel, you can't take that much stuff. There's an old saying, a rolling stone gathers no moss. And if you stay in one place, you can start noticing, is hold on to things, and you can see if you really need them or not. I once had hired a professional organizer just to sort out a bunch of things. And she pointed to a few things, said, do you use that? And I said, not really. And she goes, how about that? As this, I said, no. And then she said, okay, they're sitting here, even though you're not using them. And then she had this phrase for them. She said, that becomes visual noise. You have things in your purview that are just disturbing your mind because they're extra. You don't really need them for anything. And so we should just be careful not to be atyahara, over collecting just for the sake of holding on to things, and seeing what our intention is to use them. Okay, Aksaj for the close.
Maybe you should go, Marge. I would just really like the point of Yukta Vairagya and how we can all practice it. How realize that we're not doing anything for the pleasure of ourselves. We're doing the pleasure for Krishna. That's something we all have to remember because sometimes I get too attached to stuff. I just like find myself being like letting it like hard to let go of stuff I really like. But I realize that this is all Krishna's and nothing belongs to me. So that's something I really like.
So you've noticed it in some cases that you have things that you're attached to. Yes?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, well, that's good. Keep noticing. It's good to have that view of seeing, what am I using for Krishna and how. Well, it's definitely a section worth going over again and again. And fortunately, we'll have that opportunity because this whole month we're going to be chanting chapter 12. That is if you're a card-carrying member or an unofficial member of CHAD, which means that we chant one chapter a day of the Bhagavad Gita between the time the sun rises and the sun sets. We never fail to chant at least one chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day. Those are CHAD members. Are any of you CHAD members? Would anybody like to sign up? Okay, you're in. All you have to do is just at least chant all the Sanskrit or the English, or you can do Sanskrit. Somebody translate for me. Okay, I'm going to show, before we read the Lilamrita, I'm going to do a presentation called Communications 101. This dates back as far as 2004, so the slides are not AI presented. They were done very much by hand many years ago. Okay, Communications 101. Your tongue is a rudder, and the rudder directs the boat. My father built a sailboat in his garage in Lafayette, California, and then he had a place to keep it at Lake Merritt, which is in Oakland. And he used to take my brother and me out sailing. And then I once was asking about the rudder, and he showed me how it worked. It's such a small instrument, but it runs the whole boat. So similarly, our tongues are consequential in our lives, the way we use our tongue. If you look at your tongue, it kind of looks like a rudder a little bit. And the way that you speak is the way that you're going to go. So I'm talking about some principles and techniques for communications. Are you all ready for this? Okay, only Arav's ready. Everybody else, you can take a break. Just kidding. Okay, here we go. Principles. Speak to the soul. When you talk to people, remember, although we shouldn't artificially imitate being Mahabhagavat, but in the Sri Upanishad, yes, min sarvani bhutani atmani vad vijanataha tatra ko mohakashoka ekatvan manupashitaha yastu sarvani bhutani atmani vanupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tatu nabjigupsate. These verses are beautiful in the Sri Upanishad. They talk about how if you see somebody as a spirit soul and you interact with them, you'll never hate anybody or any being or anything because you'll see it all related to Krishna. So remember when you're speaking to people about their ultimate interest in life, even if you have mundane things to say, Be respectful of the fact that they're spiritual souls. So let that guide the way you interact with people, the way you speak with them. This is the verse, one who systematically sees. So that word systematically, anupashyati, means to follow in the footsteps of those who do see like that, but treat people uh, as if they're spirit souls, even if you don't see it perfectly. Don't imitate, but follow in the footsteps when you interact with others. And certainly let it guide your speech. Also, speak from the soul. And then speak from your heart, from your soul when you speak to other people. Remember your highest interest in life and speak as a spiritual being. Of course, in many circumstances, it's not that you'll tell people, I'm a spirit soul, you're a spirit soul, but just make sure it's sincere the way you speak. And speaking from the soul, see the next slide. We have this idea of saffron mercy particles. This is from a prayer or a verse which was spoken by Prithu Maharaj. And Prithu Maharaj said that when somebody is pure in their purpose, in other words, their main goal in speaking anything is to serve Krishna. That sound vibration is different from somebody's sound vibration who's self-interested. And he says poetically that when your intention is correct, properly aligned in service to Krishna, and you speak, then the sound of your voice touches Krishna's lotus feet, and it dislodges saffron mercy particles. And then the sound of your voice is mixed with those saffron mercy particles. And when it goes in the ear of somebody else, then they're deeply affected by it. That's why it's such an amazing instrument, the voice. It broadcasts our consciousness. If you've ever had somebody, like maybe your mom or something, say to you, I don't like your tone of voice, because can perceive like what's your intention. You said the right thing, but you said it with the wrong tone. Well, the tone of somebody who loves Krishna is saying it from the soul to the soul is purifying, like saffron mercy particles. So there's some austerities of speech that Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. And here's a little refresher. I know you all know these, but I'm going to repeat them for the sake of thoroughness. To be truthful, make a note, tie a string around your finger, or more likely around your wrist. And remember, try to go for some time or just forever in telling the truth and see how it feels. It's a different kind of experience. Your speech should be pleasing, it should be beneficial, non-agitating, and also the austerity speakers are regularly reciting the Vedas. And if you do Chad, you every day at least do one chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you'll cover that austerity for sure. But these are something that you can be aware of when you're speaking and let them be a filter. So when you talk, make sure you're being truthful, pleasing, beneficial. Is your speech beneficial or not? Non-agitating. Even Krishna, when he spoke to Kaliya, it's mentioned in Nectar Devotion, he's such a pleasing talker that it sounded like he was speaking to him in a compassionate way. And he also, after Indra tried to annihilate Vrindavan and Krishna met him in a secluded place, says Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he said, oh, to Indra, he said, I hope I didn't offend you in any way. Krishna's a pleasing talker. So I have a quiz for you. Are you ready for a quiz, Madhav? Yes? What's the most interesting topic to every living being? I'll give you 10 seconds. Madhav, anything? The most pleasing, the most interesting topic to every living being.
If I had to say one, probably money to most living beings.
Okay, the money, we'll put that on the list and see if we get any points for that. Arav, what's the most interesting topic to every living being?
I think it's ourselves.
And there's a winner. Let's go to the next one. His or her own self. Yes, I'm sure money is right up there too. And what were you going to say, Arya? Now remember, be truthful. What were you going to say?
Materialistic stuff.
I like the way you put things. Thank you, Arya. His or her own self. And then let's see the next slide. Dale Carnegie. You ever heard of Dale Carnegie? He's a famous author and among other things, entrepreneur. He said, remember that a person's name is, to him or her, the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Yeah, just imagine you're in a crowded room somewhere and everyone's talking at the same time. You know, on movie sets, my father used to work in repertory theater, and he told me when there were extras on the set and they were having conversation in the background and they wanted it to sound like just regular conversation, there was a phrase that all of them had to say over and over again, which was rhubarb, hubbub, subbub, rhubarb, hubbub, subbub. And then they'd all be talking like that. And then you hear this rumble in the background. So imagine you're in a room and everyone's talking and it's just rhubarb, hubbub, subbub, rhubarb, hubbub, subbub, rhubarb, hubbub, subbub. And then all of a sudden you hear your name. Like all of a sudden you hear Rion. And they go, who? Wait a minute. Who said Rion? Because you heard your name. What are they talking about? They're talking about me. That's interesting. So this is one of his points, a principle that remember that a person's name is to them the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So you can, when you meet somebody, remember their name. If you remember their name and the next time you talk to them, it is really a winner. And one time I was in Grand Central Station distributing books in New York City, and it's a very busy place. And this guy bought a book and he came back about 10 minutes later and he said, what's my name? And I couldn't remember. Because I just didn't remember. And I go, I can't remember. And he goes, here, take your book back. Give me my money back. I don't want it if you can't remember my name. And I started thinking after that, yeah, this quote is so true. People really take it personally. And if you can remember somebody's name, it's very beneficial. What to speak if you remember their pet's name too. Okay, let's see the next one. Shukadev Goswami. He says it is his or his own self that is most dear to every living being. For 50 points. Does anybody know where this quote comes from? Shukadev Goswami. It's Bhagavatam. It's 10th canto. It's in the 14th chapter. At the end of the 14th chapter, he talks about Atmanam Akilatmanam, how Krishna is the soul of everyone's self, the self of everyone's self. And then he says, actually, the self is most dear to every living being, more dear than anything else. But we just don't know the self of ourself. That's what he points out. If we did, we'd love Krishna more than anything. Okay? It is simply for the satisfaction of this self that the whole material creation of moving and non-moving entities exists. So it's a principle to keep in mind when you're communicating that people are really self-interested. So how we can employ that principle, we'll see in the next slides. Remember this radio station? Does anybody have a radio? Or are those no longer in existence in the world? WIIFM. What does that stand for? Let's click it through, Brajaras Bhavana. What's in it for me? This is the question that everybody wants to know. When you're telling them something, all they hear is rhubarb, hubbub, subbub, rhubarb, hubbub, subbub, rhubarb, hubbub. But then when you actually say what they're going to get from it, then they go, oh, okay, I'm interested. That's a principle to remember. Here's a principle for dealing with fanatics. Does anybody know what a fanatic is? I'm going to tell you. Get ready. Fanatic. A fanatic, a person filled with excessive and single-minded zeal, especially for an extreme religious or political cause. Has anybody ever heard from, met, have a acquaintance with a fanatic? Yes, Advaita Chandra has met a fanatic, heard of a fanatic, Brajras Bhavana. Okay, I got this from a book called How to Win an Argument. It's a book on rhetoric from a professor at York University, and he gave this principle for dealing with fanatics. Let's click through and see what happens. A person filled with excessive and single-minded zeal, especially for an extreme religious or political cause. Drum roll, please. First rule for dealing with a fanatic. Don't. Skip it. Move on. You can thank me later. I saved you a lot of trouble in your life. When you see fanatics here, there, and everywhere, and they're totally attached to their one position, just move on. Don't deal with them. You know, Rupa Sanatan Goswami, they're famous for signing people's little chit where they said, you know, we want to debate about this or that. And he said, we're busy doing Mahaprabhu's work. Okay. Techniques. Those are some principles. Here's some techniques for communications. Become a master asker. What? A master asker. And here's why you should become a master asker. A question is a hook. You look at a question mark, it looks like a hook, right? So it holds, it catches, it brings people back when you ask questions. A question is a tennis racket, or I should say a question mark. It reframes, it puts the ball back in their court, and it deflects. Question's also a looking glass. Like if you hold it up and you put a little glass in that question mark, it's a looking glass because it clarifies. So you can learn this not in an annoying way, but in a useful way to answer a question with a question. And if you can't find a question, there's a generic one that you can ask people, or a couple of them. One is, why do you ask? Or another one is, how do you mean that? Because oftentimes people ask questions that you really can't answer or that are specifically designed so that you'll give an embarrassing answer. So it's better to answer the question with a question. And let's see the next slide, if it gives us any advice. Yes, just a little more about that. You can go back to the last slide, because when people ask a question like, say, are you a Hindu? And I think this might come up later, but I'm going to do it now. What if somebody asks you, Arna, if you're a Hindu, what would you say?
I would like agree, but then it's hard to explain like the differentiations of like Hindus and how there's different beliefs inside the religion itself. So I said they could definitely research more on it because I don't know the exact answer, but it's definitely something they should look into.
Okay, now that was a very articulate answer, but it was also amorphous because you didn't have an answer for them. And the reason was because it's exactly what you said. It's really hard to say what a Hindu is, right? So here's what I want to teach you. I'm going to ask you, and I want you to follow this principle to answer a question with a question. And in this case, I'm going to tell you what to say, but I'm going to write it in the chat box. And then, wait a minute, I have to make sure it goes to everybody. Hold on. Okay, now I'm going to ask you again. Are you a Hindu? And don't answer until you see my little thing in the chat.
What's your definition of a Hindu?
Now, which answer was better, the first one or the second one that she asked? To let everyone vote. Was her first answer better or her second one better? Even Arna's voting for number two. So the second one's better because it's a question it's too hard to answer. And you have to leave it like Arna so expertly did the first time. And she said, you know, we'll have to do some more research. You know, you can't answer that question. So if you've ever played baseball or cricket, you're supposed to wait for a pitch you can hit, right? Otherwise, you're going to strike out. I don't know what happens in cricket when you strike out, but I do in baseball. It's a bummer. So you have to wait for the right pitch to hit, right? So you can ask a question to those kinds of things that you don't have the answer to right away. And even if you do have the answer, it's really helpful to think what they're thinking. Well, Kavin says, I think a Hindu is one who believes in God, even like Islam and Christianity is Hindu and Muslims. And again, the key word here is you think. So, you know, asking that question and keep filtering it down until we get to a clearer idea of what a Hindu. So, if you, let's do it again. Are you a Hindu? Is this Hinduism? And you say, Arna?
What's your definition of a Hindu?
Well, I think it's somebody who believes in God, even like Islam and Christianity and Hinduism. Muslims are all Vaishnavas. Um, then would you ask another question if you got that?
I think I'd like agree with them, and that's definitely a point that I believe in too. But there's also other definitions out there.
Yeah, so could you ask them for more definition then? Can you ask
Yeah.
more questions back to them? Yeah, the answer is yes. Even that one, if somebody says and they say, "Oh yeah, what do you mean by Vaishnavas?" You said all Muslims, Christian, they're Vaishnavas. What do you mean by that? So I'm just giving you the principle here, or a technique, as answering a question with a question to refine things, and we'll move on. What is your philosophy? So when the devotees first went to India, the American devotees, and many people came up to them and they asked them, what do you think of this Swami or that Swami? Because so many Swamis are there, and they saw these people are engaged in some spiritual practice. So, what do you think of this Swami, that Swami? So they asked Prabhupada, what should I say? And Prabhupada said, ask them, what is his philosophy? Don't get into the personality and say something about the person. Just ask, what is his philosophy? And then compare it to the Bhagavad Gita. So it means assail the philosophy, not the person. Next. Here's Srila Prabhupada in action using this answering question to question. Woman reported, why do you people shave your heads? Prabhupada answered, Srila Prabhupada, why do you shave your legs? And then it goes to the next one. Student guest, why are most of your followers young people? Prabhupada, why are most university students young people? You see how Prabhupada's answering a question with a question? And then the answer comes, student, because that's the age of education. Prabhupada, that's also the age of Krishna consciousness. So he gets it lined up by answering a question with a question. Next, professor asks Prabhupada, why do you give sannyas to young people? Prabhupada says, what do you mean by young? Silence. Prabhupada, young means, no, it should be old. I'm sorry, this slide is wrong. What do you mean by old, it should say. Sorry, this is an old deck. And then Prabhupada says, old means about to die. Can you say that you are any older or younger than they are? Can you see? Question with a question. Next one. Yeah, just when you're talking to people, you can ask them questions like these. Just go through rapid succession. Where's your hometown? What's your profession? What's your view on life? How many languages do you speak? Do you have full set of Bhagavatams in your home? So, do you believe in the power of prayer? These are all in the context of distributing books and questions that you can ask people to find out something about them, whether they're open to taking a set of Bhagavatams. You can take interest in them because the most interesting topic is one's own self. Do you believe in the power of prayer? Okay, we'll keep going. Also, remember that people respond to sincere compliments. They respond well to sincere compliments. In fact, they even respond well to perhaps insincere compliments. Here's Sanatan Goswami telling the Muslim jailkeeper when he's trying to get out of jail, dear sir, you are a saintly person and are very fortunate. You have full knowledge of the revealed scriptures such as the Quran and similar books. Universal compliments, you look spiritual. What's your secret? If you tell somebody they look spiritual and ask them what their secret is, you're going to get a very interesting view of their personalities. And it's from asking questions. Okay, keep going. I want to see some more principles. Emphatic listening. Listen to people very carefully. This is one of the main points of communication. It's oftentimes when somebody else is talking, I'm just thinking about what I'm going to say rather than what they're actually saying. And one of the ways to appreciate what they're saying is to respond to them and repeat back what they just said. If I understand you correctly, and then repeat back to them. And that's one of the ways in which you can have an instant rapport with people. There's also nonviolent communication. When you show in your reply that you have understood, even if you do not agree with what the person says. Get consensus that both have heard and understood before you move on. And this is another point that this professor makes in his book on rhetoric. He said most people, when they're arguing about something, the problem is they forget what they're arguing about. And so he said, always come back to what the main point is. And in the essence of nonviolent communication is don't blame the other person for how you feel. Explain what you need or desire, humbly request, do not demand. So one of the main points of communication nonviolently is, let's say you're sitting there studying and somebody comes in and slams the door and it disturbs you. Instead of incriminating them and saying you meant to do that, just say that it made me really jump when you do that. It disturbed my mind. And I know you didn't mean to do that, but in the future, if you could not close the door so strongly. When you take out the incrimination that they meant to do it, then it becomes nonviolent. Okay. Remember that one or two words can make or break a relationship. Make deposits in the emotional bank account. Everyone has a bank account in their heart. And remember, if you speak kindly, remember that was one of the ways that Krishna mentioned to be a kind friend to others. If you're kind, that goes into the bank account in the person's heart. And if sometime there's a mistake you make and you have to take a withdrawal, you won't overdraw. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. There's a few more slides, but I just want to hear if there's any reflection. Any of those principles that you heard that you felt like you could take away? Part and then Vivan, all in the same Bhakti lab right up there in Texas. Go ahead, Part, and then Vivan, and then Arya.
Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So from the communications
Can you come
PowerPoint,
closer to your microphone, please? It's hard to
so
hear you.
from the communications PowerPoint that you just showed us, it really connected with me because that non-violent communication, I think, really will help in my life because you're able to communicate with people without them getting angry or having that whole mess up in that mood too.
Very wise observation, Part. And it's really one of the essential parts of how to move through the world successfully is how you communicate. And if it's in that vein of nonviolent communication, you'll avoid a lot of problems. Okay, Vivan?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
for your amazing presentation on communication. And I just wanted to share that many of the strategies that you showed to us today and many of the example questions and things that you showed us, it really connected with me a lot because we usually use a lot of those questions when we go out for book distribution. And we noticed that when we try to build a relationship with a person on, even when it's a random stranger and you've never met them, you try to build that relationship and try to get to know more about them and their personality. It really allows them to connect with the spiritual literature and go deeper and think about deeper questions in their life rather than just superficial ones. So yeah, I really appreciated the PowerPoint, Amaraj, and thank you for sharing all the secrets and all of these nice ways to interact with people when we're going book distribution or going on book distribution or just in our regular life in general.
Yeah, or when you relate with your family members too, keeping that in mind too. Yeah, definitely. And it's a good point you mentioned about going on book distribution because it's definitely a laboratory where you'll put all these communicative skills into play. Aria,
I wanted to share that one day my friends asked me why I don't eat egg. So I told them because when we eat egg, the mother chicken becomes sad. And then they said that there's these types of eggs are you can eat. They are not chickens. And then I kind of did not know what to reply.
I see. So you're looking for an answer for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with eggs, there's certain kinds of eggs that are fertilized or not fertilized, so people make a distinction between them. And as far as eating certain kinds of food and why we do it, it really depends on who's asking and how much they can appreciate, because it can be really an entangling conversation. The most uh, the foundational point just among ourselves of why we don't eat certain things is because Krishna doesn't eat them, and we only eat prasadam. We're not even vegetarians. We're actually prasadamatarians. If Krishna ate eggs and he liked them, we'd give them to him, and we'd say, "Fine, we'll take it as prasad," but we only take prasad. So that's that's for us. We know that, and that's the main point, is that we just take prasadam or food that's offered to God. And so there's certain things that we don't eat. And that's the safest point to make, is that, we offer all our food to God, and it's mentioned that there's certain kinds of food that are offerable and so other kinds of food that isn't. And that avoids getting into all the little details. I'll tell you another thing. It's just about sometimes people say about onions and garlic, because that's really entangling also to get into. And people say, why don't you eat onions and garlic? And I say, don't you know that the top gourmet cooks in the world nowadays don't use garlic and onions? And it's true, because it dominates all the other spices and you can't taste anything. So they don't even they don't use them anymore. And most of the time people are like, oh, they're kind of amazed. They say, oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. Yeah, go look it up. So it really depends on who you're talking to, how much detail you get into with eggs. Because if you start saying, well, certain foods are in the mode of ignorance, this or that, and if you just say we prasadam or food that's first offered to God, and it's not in our scriptures that we offer eggs to God, that can be one way that you can answer. And then what more can they say? Okay, Arya?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Tarini Radha?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the slides. Um, it I wanted to add to Barth's point about the nonviolence, nonviolent communication, because I think that would be very helpful in my life on my end and also personally on other people's ends. But definitely my end, because when I was like reading the slides, I was thinking, okay, but like if I do nonviolent communication, what if like the other person like still is agitated and they keep on like attacking you with their words? Then I realized just keep up the nonviolent communication, because that like at some point if you keep staying calm, if you keep your calm, then the other person will either be like confused, as like they'll stop their angry words and all that, and they'll also calm down, or they'll have nothing more to say. They'll be like surprised that you're still calm. So I feel like it's a very good value to like have like ingrained in your head, nonviolent communication. And also I wanted to share something like at the beginning of class. I had some computer issues, so I kind of missed the first part of class. But you mentioned you were asking values we'd like to have, and one of them for me was like tolerance and forgiveness, because more like it's well, not forgiveness, but for me, I personally would like to have tolerance in the sense that sometimes us like devotees, or I wouldn't call myself a devotee, but like I'm saying like an aspiring to be devotee, I we have like standards, right? And so sometimes we have our way of thinking, and we're very like staunch with that, right? So sometimes I know it's very easy for people to judge others based off of our high expectations, but I would like to like I do that a lot, and I've been lately like trying to stop myself from judging others. And so like tolerance of other people's um flaws or different like behaviors, I would like to adopt that mindset. Hare Krishna.
Wow, very worthy values to take on. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I was impressed that you picked up so readily on the nonviolent communication and saw applications for it. Well, I have to be sensitive in my communication now because so many of you have your hands up, but we've run out of time. So all I can say to assuage your sense of this shortcoming of mine is to say that this is an ongoing conversation and we'll pick it up at the next possible opportunity. But I was really impressed, meaning we'll just have to continue it because we're going to end at this point. It was a vibrant, well, I would just say this, I've noticed that with such a vibrant session today that I lost track of time. I really don't know where an hour and a half went, if that's what actually just happened, because it just seemed to flow through so quickly because so many of you had deep insights and it was so fluid, the whole thing. I really got a lot out of it. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining you, Jim. Please invite a friend if you know somebody who would like to be more connected with other youth. Having a sense of connectedness is one of the most important aspects for devotional service. Is when you see peers doing great and engaged in Krishna Katha, then it's natural to pick it up. And if you know somebody in that category who you could bring along, tell them the time and place, and Brajaras Bhavana and Chaitanya Nitai Nam and team will help you get connected and make sure that your friends are welcome. Okay, thanks to Awaita Chandra. I'm always happy to see you. You're one of the earliest joiners in the whole program here since back in the dark ages of the pandemic, which is half a decade old now, more than half a decade. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, Shri Shri Gaurnitai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, if you so desire, please empower everybody who joined Youth Jam today, everybody who thought about joining, those who accidentally missed it, that they may imbibe the qualities that Krishna mentions at the end of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and become very, very dear to him. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Oh,
Thank you
Hare
so much.
Krishna.
Thanks, everybody. See
Hare
you again
Krishna.
soon. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Bol.
Krishna. Hare Bol.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
thank you
See
all
you
for
guys
joining.
next week. Hare Krishna.
Peace.